Hello. Hi, this is Sarah. Has anyone joined? Hi, has anyone joined? He's just video. Hi, it's Sarah. Has anyone joined?
Hi, Sarah. Brian DeForest and Katy, Coba.
Hey, guys. How are you all?
We are wonderful.
Good.
It took a while to get in.
Oh, we did.
We made it.
We've set up a waiting room, so I think Kayla had to approve you guys in, so it might have had a little bit of a lag while she hit accept on it. Right now, it's just me and Kayla from NASCA headquarters, and it looks like a staff member from NGA has logged on, but perhaps has just logged in early and put it on mute because I don't think they're engaging right now. But we're just getting settled in. Does everything look okay on your end?
Everything looks okay here, and thank you for taking the blame because it had nothing to do with user.
It was all us.
Yeah.
It was all us.
Well, you guys have had a rough IT week, though, right? Didn't you all have something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I say props to you.
Yeah.
You've overcome a lot. So.
Yeah, we didn't know if that was part of it as well, because our ability to access the web goes up and down, and we're sitting here thinking, oh, great, we're not going to be able to make this work, but it worked.
Good. Are you all dialed in on a landline?
Yes.
Okay. One tip, and you'll hear me say this 5 times today probably, so I apologize, but if your computer speakers, I think if you go ahead and mute your computer speakers, occasionally people get a weird reverb if they're using a landline and the computer speakers are on.
Okay, I don't think we have computer speakers.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
But there's a reason that we don't run IT. Yeah. I wondered what those things are.
Looks like some more folks are joining. Hi, Ross. Can you hear us? Brian and Katy, Ross is with NGA staff as well.
Okay, sounds good.
We're just all kind of logging in right now. Yep. Hi, it's Sarah. Has anyone joined?
Hi, Sarah. It's Christy with NGA. I'm here.
Hi, we've got Katy and Brian and a couple other team members from NGA, and of course just Sarah and Kayla. And right now we're putting attendees, non-speaker attendees, in kind of a little bit of a waiting room.
Excellent.
So it'll just be us probably for the next 5 or 7 minutes or so, and then we'll start moving people over.
Okay, sounds great.
I think we're all settled in. Everybody, you sound great, so your audio is really good.
Good, thank you. And Sarah, you're going to mute all the lines when people aren't speaking, right?
We are going to ask folks to self-mute, and then because it's easier for them to unmute themselves. And if we have anybody who has like weird background noise or any issues, we'll do a hard mute on individual lines, but that'll be sort of a second choice on approach. It's a little hard to unmute that way, but we will be asking people when we bring them over to go ahead and mute their lines and their computer speakers.
Right, but for speakers, for us, we should mute ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and
perfect.
Yeah, I would do it on your phone. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And it looks like maybe we had some folks maybe from Arizona just dial in.
Yep, this is Arizona. We have myself, Gilbert Davidson, and Andy Tobin.
Yep.
Hi, how are you guys? You guys your audio sounds really good.
Oh, good. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you guys see the screen okay? Everything looks good?
I'm getting it up right now.
And yeah, as it's coming in.
Excellent. So it's just the NASCA and NGA staff, and we have Katy and Brian from Oregon, and then now our Arizona team. So we are in good shape. And then we'll bring over attendees. They're in a waiting room right now. We'll bring them over in probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let's see. Do you have is the PowerPoint showing for you or not?
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
So we've got about 10 minutes until we get started. Does anybody have any kind of last minute questions, any technical things you want to walk through, just any flow questions?
So is it,
I think
this
Oregon's
Gilbert?
good.
Oh,
Y'all good? Good.
and this is Gilbert. Same format, so you'll kind of lead off Oregon and then Arizona and then discussion?
Yep, that's right. This is Sarah. I will do like 30 seconds of housekeeping, reminders about muting your lines and whatnot. One quick thing I did want to mention, we would like to record this for state members only. Are all the speakers comfortable with that? It would be in our resource library and accessible only for state members.
I'm fine with that.
We're fine with that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. We have already had a couple of states ask if they could listen to recording. So I know Virginia and a couple other ones really wanted to attend. So I appreciate it. So I'll do just very quick housekeeping. I will introduce all of the speakers. Christy Amberman from NGA is going to give a very quick, kind of welcome. I'll go into the NASCA remarks about who chief administrators are and their typical scopes of responsibility. NGA has a few slides they're going to go over talking about just the national landscape of COOs. I'll then kick it over to the Oregon team. And then when you guys kind of conclude, I'll say thank you. I'm happy to introduce our Arizona speakers. Then you guys will go. We're going to try to save all the Q&A for the second half of the call so that their lines aren't unmuted and we can kind of make sure both states get their chance to to go walk through their things before we do Q&A. I'll mention to them they can chat in their questions, but I'm going to really encourage them to just speak up. We're really hopeful that the speakers, the attendees ask a bunch of questions. If not, NGA has one kind of in their back pocket to get us started. Everybody still pretty good?
Yep.
Awesome. All right.
Sarah, that sounds great. One question for the slides, to move forward, do we do just the forward button?
Let's see, Kayla is gonna, actually I think I have to do it. I will make you a host right now. And then it should, let me get Kayla to do that because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. And then you should see a forward backward error. Is that right, Kayla? Sorry.
But I'm not sure unless I give her control if she can.
Oh, yeah.
Probably just say.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
I'm happy to just say next slide. We don't have that many if that works for you all.
Yes, that'd be great. If you don't mind,
Okay.
I think it would be a little cleaner on our side.
Perfect. I like that. Thank you, Sarah.
Excellent. All right, so we will go ahead and start moving people over, and I'll just start welcoming folks as they come on board, and then I'll kick things off right at time. All right, thanks, guys. I'm going to put on mute for a second, and then we're going to start moving people in. Good afternoon, welcome. It looks like we've got some folks dropping in. We are getting set up and we're going to start right at 2 o'clock, but welcome to the webinar. Good afternoon. I'm seeing some folks getting logged in. Welcome to NASCA and NGA's webinar. We are getting all set up and settled in, but if you can take just a moment and hard mute your phone line and hard mute your computer speakers, that would be really helpful, and we will get started here at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Sarah from NASCA, and welcome. I see some people getting logged in. If you can do a hard mute on your phone lines as you're getting settled in, we are going to get started here right at 2 o'clock, but welcome to the webinar. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm seeing more folks join our webinar. This is Sarah Razor from NASCA, so welcome to everyone. We still have several folks who are logging in kind of as we speak, so we're going to get started here in about 2 minutes once they all get kind of in and settled in. If you just joined us, if you can please mute your phone lines, and also if you can mute your computer speakers. That will help us from getting background noise and reverb. So if you can go ahead and do a hard mute on your desk phones or your cell phone, and also on your computer speakers, that will help us doubly be sure not to get reverb. Welcome, and we are going to get started in probably 1 or 2 minutes once we get everyone in. All right, everyone. Well, it looks like we've had a few more folks join us. Welcome. This is Sarah Razor, and I'm the Executive Director for the National Association of State Chief Administrators. We are very excited to have everyone with us today. We are very appreciative of our partnership with the National Governors Association to host this webinar, The Rise of the COO Model and the Working Dynamic with the CAO. I also want to thank our two states who are speaking today, Oregon and Arizona. So we are going to get started. If you haven't already, if you can do a hard mute on your either your desktop phone or your cell phone, if you'll go ahead and mute your line, and then if you can please mute your computer speakers. Both those things help us avoid background noise. Sounds like I'm hearing maybe just a little background noise. If you can go ahead and do those two mutes for me, it will really help us on today's call. I have just a couple of very quick housekeeping remarks, and then we will dive right in. If this is your first NASCA webinar, welcome. We like to host very more informal webinars that are very participatory. So on the second half of today's call, we're going to have a Q&A session, and we really encourage you guys to think of this webinar as very much like if you were sitting at a round table an event with our two hosting states, Arizona and Oregon. So we really want to encourage you guys to ask questions. We'll announce when the Q&A begins. So at that point, please go ahead and unmute your lines and please join us for that conversation. If you're feeling a little more shy, we do have a chat feature at the bottom. If you can do a chat to everyone if you have a question. We really want this to be participatory. And I know that our two states that have joined us really want to provide answers and feedback for you guys. So please join us for the Q&A at the second half of the call. Sounds like we've got just a little feedback. If everyone can please help us by muting your line. The next thing I wanted to note, we are recording this call for the state members that were unable to join us today. And so the call is going to be recorded and available for state members only. And we will share a link of that out if you've got folks from your office who would also like to listen to this after the event. All right, and with that, I will introduce our speakers today. Today with us, we have Katy Coba, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the state of Oregon, as well as her counterpart, Brian DeForest, who's the Chief Administrative Officer for the state of Oregon. We also have Gilbert Davidson, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the state of Arizona, and Andy Tobin, who's the Director of the Department of Administration in Arizona. Again, I'm Sarah Razor with NASCA, and Christy Amberman with NGA Consulting is also with us.
Sarah, thank you so much. This is Christy with NGA. NGA is very pleased to be co-hosting this webinar with NASCA. Our team provides assistance on leadership and management issues to governors and their senior staff throughout the governor's term in office, starting from election day through the final year. And we regularly work with chiefs of staff, legal counsels, policy and legislative directors, countless staff members really in the governor's office. And so we have most recently been working with COOs, and so we're very pleased for this discussion and are excited to hear from our state presenters. Sarah.
Thanks, Christy, and we are as well. So with that, we are ready, I think, to get started. So before we really begin, I'd like to give just a very brief overview of who the state chief administrators are, and then NGA will provide kind of the national landscape of who chief operating officers are. So the state chief administrators are typically overseeing the operational elements of state government, more the business functions of them. In all 50 states, they oversee scopes of responsibilities, including procurement, facilities management in nearly every state. Most state chief administrators have some sort of makeup of general services. They also oversee things like construction, telecommunications. It's a combination of these, and their titles might vary widely from state to state, but those are very common core functions for them. They also oversee kind of a makeup of financial management, including risk management in many states, accounting, budget, insurance, audit. In about 36 states, they oversee human resources when it's more of a centralized or enterprise-wide function, and that can often include professional development and employee benefits. One thing I like to say about our NASCA members is that they make fast friends. Their average tenure right now is about 24 months. And of course, this is more of the lower end of the tenure cycle as we've just wrapped the gubernatorial election cycle up. But it is a position where it's a more shorter tenure, and we work really hard to make sure that folks are connected on calls like this so that they can get up to speed very quickly. So that's kind of a general overview of what types of areas chief administrators oversee. And I believe NGA would like to give a few comments about the COO's role.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes. So as you said, this is an evolving role, and so we are pleased to see that state governments are increasingly recognizing the value of the COO. In states that have a COO, the governor is responsible for setting the vision and strategy that the state COO is responsible for delivering. And as you would expect, governors who appoint COOs tend to prioritize detailed oversight and management of state operations. In 2018, we collaborated with McKinsey & Company to conduct a survey of governors' COOs, and in the survey, we found that 80% of those governors had identified a separate management initiative to improve the economy and efficiency of state government, and also 60% of them have mandated a management improvement strategy that they use in either some or all of the state agencies. So the COO model is a valuable one that governors are increasingly incorporating when they want to adopt an enterprise-wide perspective of state government. From the next slide, you'll see, as we said, that the role of the COO is a growing trend in states. And so by the end of 2018, 13 states had named COOs, 24 others had a role that was COO-like in what it oversees. And as this year has started with so many new governors in office, we found that at least 8 states with new governors have named COOs in this beginning part of their administration. So we see a lot of interest from governors as well as chiefs of staff in using this new model to manage state government operations. In the next slide, you'll see that state COOs typically perform 3 main functions. Just to give you a quick perspective, there are typically 5 areas of responsibility where they may focus their attention. It could be priority agencies that are tasked with accomplishing the governor's highest priorities. Other times they're engaging with agencies that would benefit from more senior leadership support. Also cross-cutting initiatives, supporting operational excellence, and then also addressing strategic human resources challenges, then trying to work to better align the statewide talent management strategy. So this impact of the COO, we've found from conversations thus far that will vary based on whether the COO is given a broad or a narrow mandate. And so finally, we do invite you to read our white paper for more information about our findings. As I said, we did a survey in 2018. This is a newer program that we're starting up, but we continue to see a lot more interest from governors and states about this, and obviously providing good opportunities for effective state management. And so with that, Sarah, I'll turn it back to you so we can launch into our state presentations.
Thanks, Christy. That was very helpful. And so now it is my pleasure to introduce our first 2 speakers. We've got Katy Coba, who again is the COO for the state of Oregon, and Brian DeForest, who's the Chief Administrative Officer for Oregon. Thank you both again for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you if you could help us understand Oregon's model.
Great. It is still morning in Oregon, so good morning and good afternoon. This is Katy Coba, the Chief Operating Officer for the state of Oregon. The limited knowledge that I have from other COO structures in other states leads me to believe that Oregon is a bit distinct in the way we are set up with our COO. The position was created about 8 years ago by the previous governor, and at that time they had a discussion about whether the COO should be located in the governor's office proper, like other policy advisors, or as a director of a state agency. And at that time, they landed with the Chief Operating Officer for Oregon also being the director of our Department of Administrative Services. So I really wear 2 hats in the same job. And as director of the Department of Administrative Services, I have in essence 3 deputies. One is our Chief Financial Officer for the state of Oregon, one is the Chief Human Resources Officer for the state, and then our Chief Administrative Officer, Brian DeForest, who you'll hear from here in a minute. So as an agency director with that dual hat, you know, I have responsibilities in terms of the enterprise of state government and also as the director of the agency. I would say I would guess about an 80-20 split in terms of my time and focus. I would say 80% of it really is focused on the enterprise of state government and carrying out the governor's key initiatives for the enterprise, and 20% is on the function of the department itself. And so I rely very heavily on Brian, and he'll speak here in a little bit. I almost view him as, in essence, being the director of the department's pure department programs. In Oregon, I would say the governor has outlined, and she's in her second term now, so this is not a new function for her either in Oregon, but I would say her 3 priorities that she's really laid out for me are around furthering her focus around diversity, equity, and inclusion in state government, both in terms of the makeup of our workforce as well as how we think about delivering our services to Oregonians. The workforce challenges that we're seeing in Oregon, which is not unique to Oregon and not unique to the public sector. And then finally, really seeing advancements in efficiency and effectiveness through our IT systems. We have a lot of legacy IT systems in Oregon. We just replaced our human resources information system with Workday. We've got payroll coming next. We have a number of agencies that are moving forward with modernization on their systems, and that's going to be a really, really big lift for us here in the next few years. And then I think another point that I'd like to make is my relationship kind of as a bridge between the governor's office and my colleagues as directors in other agencies. Oregon is a very decentralized state government structure. We probably have, depending on how you count, close to 90 different state agencies. Our largest is our Department of Human Services, which is about 9,500 state employees, and it goes all the way down to small boards and commissions that might just have 2 employees. Some directors are appointed by the governor, many are appointed by their board or commission. So very much a decentralized function, and I play a role in working with my colleagues really in onboarding directors, but also keeping agencies out of trouble, helping them understand what the governor's policy priorities are, weighing in with policy staff about why implementing a certain direction they want to go may be easier or harder, and helping to guide that, and really serving as a link between agencies and the governor's office. I think my background in state government helps that a lot. I served as an agency director for another agency, the Department of Agriculture, for 13.5 years before coming to this position. And I would say that a lot of my colleagues in state government I have worked with for a long time, and I think they view me as someone that they can come to if they are not clear about where the governor wants to go, or have questions, or feel like there might be a better avenue and not sure how to provide that information back to the governor's office and her staff. So sometimes I feel like I'm the mother hen of state government or the chief counselor, but I think it's a role that is working well here in Oregon. With that, I think I will turn it over to Brian, and he can share a little bit more about what it really means to run the Department of Administrative Services.
Well, good morning and afternoon to folks out there. So as Katy said, she's an 80-20 split, 80% really focused on the higher level policies and the governor's office, 20% on the department itself. I'm the opposite split. So I'm 80% on the everyday operations of DAS here in Oregon, and then 20% taking a step back and really looking at the enterprise policy and how we're going to roll things out to government itself. I have the traditional general services underneath me, so I take care of the everyday procurement, fleet, parking, accounting, payroll, all of those types of functions. I do not have the centralized IT policy. That lies within our Chief Information Officer, who is a counterpart more to Katy than to me. What's really nice here is I've worked in various divisions in DAS. I've worked in various agencies across the state. So, and I was really trained through college and through my experience in the private sector through operations. And that is, you come up with a great policy and I operationalize it. And that's where Katy and I can complement each other very, very well. Her background in policy even extends to being a policy advisor to a former governor. So they conceptualize ideas, and then I make sure that we get it out on the street. So my network of communication, while I do have a direct line to each of the agency directors, I also have direct lines to the business services administrators. That is the lieutenants, the sergeants, and the corporals within an agency. So we've got multiple feeds for communication, and I'm the one that really translates that here's how you're going to apply the policy within your agency with your staff. So we complement each other very much so in that area. When Katy's away for any period of time, I'm left to wander around the agency, and I kind of channel Katy, if you will, in my messaging, so that I'm continuing that messaging with each of our staff. People know that when they talk with me, they're really talking with Katy. So we do that not just within the agency, but on occasion I'll have to extend out to other state agencies as well. As Katy mentioned, I'm one of the 3 chiefs that make up her deputies, and I've developed good working relationships with my other 2 counterparts. I had actually been deputy to the chief financial officer as well. So it's easy for me to flow in and out of conversations, in and out of are we developing policy work, or are we actually operationalizing? So that's where we end up with a really great complement between the 2 roles. That's kind of it in a nutshell. We fill in each other's, where I have strengths, I help fill in a weakness for somebody else, and vice versa. Where my weaknesses are, that's where Katy or George or Madeline, our other 2 chiefs, step in and cover up for my weaknesses. So we end up complementing each other quite a bit.
I think I'll just add at the tail end, Brian and I have a standing meeting once a week, but we're often on the phone or texting or connecting as needed, passing by each other in the hall as well. So we do make sure we're meeting at least once a week, but I would say by far we talk more often than that. And with that, I think that's about our 10 minutes, and look forward to questions when we get to that part of the segment.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. That was really helpful for us to understand your all's working dynamic. Very interesting model. So with that, we will then now turn to our colleagues in Arizona. It's my pleasure to turn this over to Gilbert Davidson, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and Andy Tobin, who is the Director of the Department of Administration. So with that, I'll turn it to our colleagues in Arizona.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah and Christy. I just want to, again, I think, reiterate the importance of a discussion like this, and appreciate NGA and NASCA helping to organize that. And I'm a big believer and passionate person when it comes to how do we continue to professionalize government and manage it appropriately and drive for results. And I hopefully, as kind of what we're talking about here today, helps to really plant that seed across with other states. So I wanted to, just like Oregon, wanted to talk a little bit about our COO role, and then just a unique opportunity I had in an interface with our Department of Administration, and then I'll turn it over to Andy to talk from his perspective. So I started my tenure with state government in 2017, and my background prior to that had been in city management. I was a city manager, and the governor here created the position at the start of his term in 2015, Governor Ducey. And so I'm actually the 3rd COO for the state, and I think that my background in city management was to how do we begin to really plant the seed of this approach in government, having more of a operational element in the governor's office. Our governor's office, like many governor's office, had a big emphasis on policy development, and there hadn't always been kind of that key person that was really looking at metrics and driving performance across the enterprise. And so when I came into the position, there was a number of things that had already been established, and I've been able to kind of take it from there with the rest of the team. My position as the Chief Operating Officer is part of the governor's senior team. So I have regular meetings with the senior team throughout the week, and I have a standing meeting with the governor where I'm able to share updates on issues, areas where we need to be focusing, making sure that he's aware of critical operational. The cabinet structure here in Arizona, we have 35 cabinet level agencies. There's probably almost 200 different boards and commissions, approximately 34,000 state employees that are contained within all of the agencies. So one of the things that drew me to this position and what was very exciting to be a part of was a system that had been established a few years prior to my arrival, and it's called the Arizona Management System. And it's a performance management tool that we use that we've rolled out to all of our agencies. Some are more advanced than others, but it basically centers on performance. So how we identify problems, create metrics, and drive towards making a difference, moving the needle. Leadership development. How do we grow leaders at all levels of the organization to do exactly that, of identifying issues, and how do we deliver a better result to the citizens and businesses that we serve? And then how do you do problem solving, basic problem solving? And so the Arizona Management System, a large bit of my time is making sure that the cadence of information is flowing up to the governor's office, so we have a good view of the progress that's being made, but it's also continuing to roll the system out equally across the entire enterprise. In addition, to try to better manage some of the operational elements of the state government, we created what's called a goal council structure. And the goal councils are centered around some of the governor's priorities. And we have different agencies that make up each of our 5 different goal councils. And we have regular meetings with them. So it's another opportunity for touch points with the agency directors, setting expectations. And again, what are we trying to ultimately deliver, not only to the governor, but to, all of Arizona. I spend a lot of time working individually with our agencies and the agency directors in particular. Many times when we've got crisis situations going on, I'll get pulled in to bring in resources from across the enterprise, and hopefully we're able to help that particular agency through the issue and make sure that it doesn't blow up into a bigger thing and something that we can manage and help keep the agency on track. Work closely with the governor and his team on the cabinet meetings, so organizing the agenda and making sure that those are productive, meaningful meetings. So basically just there to really kind of, from an operational perspective, be the voice at the table with the governor and his senior group of leaders, and making sure that we're producing things for Arizona. I do have a service interim role with the Department of Administration. So for about a year, I was serving as both COO and the director for the Department of Administration, and utilize that time as a way to really include it as part of the COO team. So I worked closely with all of the divisional leads within the agency until we had a new director that was on board, and it was an incredible opportunity to be able to have, better understand the role that the Department of Administration plays, the volume of touch points that they have across the enterprise, and it became a much more useful way to get ahead of issues. So we knew there was an HR issue brewing, or there was some other issue that was of concern, we were able to move much quicker on trying to address it and help people through whatever the issue was. So it was a good year. I would never recommend anyone serving 100%. Just because of you're not able to really focus completely on, each respective position. So I was very happy when we were able to bring on board and the governor appointed Andy Tobin, and I'm going to turn it over to Andy to talk about the Department of Administration.
Great. Thank you, Gilbert, and good morning and afternoon to all those listening in. Thank you as well, Sarah and Christy, for putting this together. And already we're stealing ideas from Katy and Brian on what they're doing up there. I love the idea of the operationalized policy issue. I think that lands in our zone almost exactly. So my background's a little different than Gilbert, and I actually knew each other because I spent time in the legislature while he was in municipal government. So we had that relationship. And I think my comments are probably going to be mostly geared to, I think, this relationship process. And I heard it in not just the tenure of Katy and Brian's communication, but you can feel that, this idea that, we're texting, we're talking and all that stuff. But that goes on with us all the time. I almost relate that in the older days before I saw the COO come in, I remember the chief of staff and the governor had that relationship. Well, I feel that that's also part of ours where, my first call in the morning is usually Gilbert and, where do we need the parachutes to land today? What crisis are we solving? But it's really not that chaotic. I think the team effort that we built here, and Brian, you even mentioned that you have lieutenants and sergeants and colonels and, and we both have access to all of those pieces. And whether Gilbert's in town or I'm on a plane or there's no slowdown in the process of this efficient management system that's now been created and available to the executive. So what I do here at the Department of Administration, we also do the HR and payroll, and the IT system is here at the Department of Administration, different a little bit from Oregon. We do all the procurement, risk management. We do all capital assets and what have you. We also have a lean process that before I arrived, Gilbert was very much engaged in, where we developed this lean processing, which actually kicked us off, I think, into this management system that you heard Gilbert talk about. I like to talk about this relationship point. I had elected office time, which at the state capitol for 8 years. And then I was also the director of our Department of Weights and Measures, as well as banking and insurance. So I kind of have this crossover where I've been able to leave the world of elected office and go into government office, and then actually go back into the elected world, and only recently coming on board to assist Governor Ducey in his second term. I think a lot of that has to do with when I arrived and Gilbert and I were communicating. I have an aerospace background. Well, municipal government, you got to do things fast and efficient as well. And we found that that relationship between what we both do is all designed to make sure that we're serving the servers, and that's everybody. I mean, if the governor's calling with a need or his policy priorities, whatever his cautions may be, we're on the phone, we're at the desk. If any of the executive staff have the same issues, certainly the agencies, and one of the criteria that I've been building up in Gilbert's direction is, hey, let's get out in front of our director. I mean, physically getting to know the colonels and the lieutenants and the sergeants, and seeing what potential silos are available for improved efficiencies, how we can take advantage of some of these economies of scales that exist. And at the same time, we get to involve our elected officials in as well, where they're constantly having those constituent conversations. How are things working, at this agency or what have you? And it's been it's an awful lot of information to disseminate. But at the end of the day, the idea of that cross communication and how we're moving that through, brings us to that, Brian, I'll steal it again, you're operationalizing that policy, because we get to also be the operational adjusters of that policy to make sure that the things that we've missed, we can now correct and bring back to the executive, and things that maybe we can add on to the efficiency and the manner by which we do business also helps. And so I think, from my sense is the executive feels like he's got a touch on all of our agencies. He has a touch on what's happening out there, and we can do that communication in a shorter period of time, freeing the governor up to also be able to go out and have more intercontact. So from the standpoint of this team effort, I can't emphasize it enough. The fact that we have municipal management involved in this process goes a long way, because we have a lot of municipal government, as you well know, that relies on this state infrastructure to be helpful to their agencies that they deal with. And it's especially important, of course, to our communities who need health and human services as well. And they're all on board. I don't think I really can find the difference besides process or besides actual function than what those processes are in those agencies that kind of mirror the outline of how we're supposed to solve problems, how we're supposed to advance this strategic government effort. So as here we are in August, we're getting ready to have all these agencies that produce, I've done it myself, our strategy forms. We're getting together with the agency directors. So the governor has a clear picture on what those strategies are, and then relates them to what his goals, policies, and priorities as well. And it's been very helpful, because you have this broad spectrum of these agency directors there at the same time, kind of hearing and seeing what those priorities are as they relate to their agency. So just that communication, that relationship, I think has really been building on our chance to really serve the executive, but also serve all of those in Arizona that we relate to.
Excellent, Andy and Gilbert. Thank you very much for those comments and those insights. I particularly liked the two quotes. We are operationalizing policy, and we are serving the servers. I think those probably land and resonate with many of our members on the call today. Those were great comments, and I think now we're ready to shift to question and answers from our participants. If you can help us by unmuting your line, and feel free to go ahead and start the conversation again. For those who may have joined late, NASCA prefers Q&A and our webinars to have a very informal feel. It should feel very much like if you were at a conference and sitting at a round table having a back and forth conversation. So I know our two states, Arizona and Oregon, are glad to take questions. And would anybody like to be the brave soul who gets us started?
Sarah, this is Christy. I know that one thing we've talked about a lot, obviously there's so many new governors coming in this year, and getting their administrations and state staff fully operational. What advice would you all have? And obviously Arizona, Oregon, you all have such a breadth of experience. What would you say to a new governor's office if they're looking to add this position of a COO? What would you say would be important for them to ensure that it can have significant impact, working with, the various other officials and the CAO as well?
So from Oregon's perspective, first of all, I believe having a COO has really been beneficial for our governor, for our agencies, and for how we deliver services to Oregonians. I would recommend that if you can make that work in your government structure, to do that. Gilbert made a really good point when he served for a year trying to do both roles. It was hard. I would say that it is hard for me doing what I do. However, as you heard me talk, in essence, I have really shifted a lot of the running the agency roles to Brian, and then where appropriate to our CFO and CHRO. So I have defaulted to spending much more of my time, I think, in what is truly the COO role. I think the other thing to consider is, just like the governors, I also serve on the governor's executive team. There's 9 of us with the governor, where we meet 3 or 4 times a week. So it's got to be a fit. I mean, you've got to figure out what is the right fit for your team, and the COO is just as much a part of the team as the rest of the executive team. The 2 long-serving COOs we've had in Oregon, one actually came from municipal government, our very first one, and then me coming from my whole career in state government. Those are 2 different backgrounds, and I think I probably had an easier time connecting with agencies than our first COO did. It took a while for him to develop those relationships and, frankly, for the agencies to trust them. But he was the right fit for our previous governor, and I think that's probably the most important thing.
And I'll just add, something when you're thinking about, if a governor is thinking about creating this, is making sure it's just what is going to be the role of the chief operating officer. What is going to be that person's authority or the expansive responsibility, and then what the clear expectations. What do you want to make sure it's achieved, because it can be, especially if you've had a historic heavy emphasis on policy within a governor's office, and it's structured that way. And then you add this role and you don't clearly define who's doing what to whom and how they interact with all the agencies. So kind of really mapping that out. Now, there will always be the blending of things and issues across many, different lines, but really trying to make sure that it's got a valued position and function within the governor's office. And I think that's what helps make it more useful, I think, for the agency directors, is that interface. And then something that's valuable to the policy team, so it's not just another person saying, well, I don't know if you can do it that way, but that it actually is bringing real world experience and operational realities to the table.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is Brian. I think your COO becomes really a political appointee. As Katy said, you have to find the right fit, and the fit has to work for the governor, and in some ways for the chief of staff and the agencies as well. What works for us across the 2 COOs that we've had is that the chiefs remain constant, and they provide that thread that goes across administrations and provides some stability for the enterprise of state government itself. And so you develop a really good working relationship there, and then you can push each other. Where the COO is going to want to push policy or agenda in one direction, it's up to, in my case, CAO, to push the opposite direction, say that it can't be done or that this is the cost of it. And then we can come to a middle ground and really be more effective for the governor and the policies that she lays out.
I think I would, from Brian's, I think I would share. I don't know that I feel that I have a role to push back, and I don't think that's what you were sharing. But I think I have a role to help efficiently accelerate and find that pathway that may actually fit better in one location versus another, or make sure we're the governors. I mean, our governors aren't here for lifetime roles either. But I think at the end of the day, they're trying to get their models out there more quickly. This program that Gilbert has got going, where we have these strategic inputs from all the directors and everything, I think that is turning into what the ongoing, I guess, that legacy that this governor is going to leave behind. That's going to be this ongoing process, because once the management levels start filling in on how to actually do business, and we started out with all of these agencies that I go to, they're having huddles with their staff to work on problems, issues and they rise up. So I found that my effort has been more an acceleration of that process. If we're finding efficiencies, cost savings, and improvements to the consumer, we use that for our baseline. And of course, if we come up with legal issues or other policy issues, I think that's why we have the dual role here, because it's where Gilbert's role is to immediately advise the executive. He's 2 doors away, in my role, because of, you know, of those folks who I now manage, to be able to come back and say, hey, this issue isn't really working, Gilbert, have we given another thought to it? But more often than not, our goal is to, you know, really start moving this process more forward more quickly. We can barely keep up with the technology issues that we're trying to advance now, and I share the same legacy problems that they had there in Oregon with what everybody's IT systems were and how we're breaking through those molds. But it also comes from the people who are there, who are trying to find these efficient new patterns and get into the right system. So.
Thank you guys for providing that insight. It's really very helpful. We'd like to now turn it over to our attendees and see if anyone has a question they would like to present to our two sets of state leaders. If you can unmute your line, please go ahead and ask away.
Well, good afternoon. This is Jody Euchre, Chief Operating Officer from North Dakota. And obviously, North Dakota is a much smaller footprint than both of you represent, or Arizona, Oregon represent. But a question I'd have for you is, if you could describe for me the relationship that you have as COO with the cabinet leaders in contrast to the relationship your governor has. And I'm really just looking for, you know, frequency, et cetera, how that relationship has been built and what the expectations are for you in working with those cabinet leaders. And then the last question I'd ask is, could you describe the most successful cabinet meeting you've had and share the frequencies of which you do those? Thanks.
Okay, I'll kick it off. In Oregon, because it's Oregon, we have multiple cabinets. And so a lot of those cabinets are formed around policy priorities. So we have a natural resources cabinet where our natural resource agency directors meet twice a month, and that's led by the governor's natural resources policy advisor. We have a children's cabinet, we have a public safety cabinet. So, and those have been long-standing cabinets for years and years in state government, and typically always led by the appropriate policy advisor in the governor's office. When my predecessor came on and the first COO, he created what we call an operational cabinet. The name of that cabinet is the Enterprise Leadership Team. That's made up of 25 different agency directors, and it clearly has our largest agency directors, but we also have, as an example, the executive director of the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, which is a 5-person agency, and that person sits on the enterprise leadership team really to represent the small board and commission and agencies' perspective and issues and share information back to them. The ELT, the enterprise leadership team, I create it. I decide who sits on it and make changes as appropriate, and then I convene those meetings, and like I said, we also meet with ELT twice a month. The governor's deputy chief of staff, who is focused on operations, comes to those ELT meetings, and she's there pretty regularly. The chief of staff for the governor comes, I would say, maybe half the time. And then we've had the governor come, maybe once or twice a year comes to those cabinet meetings. In Oregon, the governor does not regularly attend those, either the ELT, the operations cabinet, or the policy cabinets. She comes on an as-needed basis. In terms of a most successful agenda, or I would say dynamic, when the previous COO started, there was not a lot of trust amongst the enterprise leadership team. And I would say over time that has greatly developed. And for me, a characteristic of a good ELT meeting is when basically we run out of time. They're 2-hour meetings. And it's because so many of the directors are engaging in whatever the topic of the day is. And so that's the place where we also have committees to focus on the governor's initiatives. So we have a diversity, equity, inclusion committee of ELT, we have an IT committee, and then we have a workforce committee. And when we have full engagement and honest dialogue and pushing back on DAS or pushing back on this issue or that issue, to me, that truly is a sign of a successful cabinet meeting.
Hi, Jody. This is Gilbert from Arizona, and
I'll take care of it.
With ours, you had talked about kind of that relation, and the.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you.
There's really bad feedback. I don't know if that. I probably spend much more time individually with each of our agency directors than the governor does, and I think that relationship tends to be much more professional and only reporting out, or if the governor's out and about the state and there needs to be the appropriate director with him on that, it tends to be much more business focused. And I think Katy had talked about something in her opening remarks that I think is so true, is that counselor piece. I mean, that's, I spent a lot of time listening, kind of giving feedback, helping directors to work through different issues, sometimes even how to navigate on the policy side, the legislative side. So there is a lot of listening and bouncing ideas around. And I think that's, important in this role to be able to connect, build those relationships and have a trust where when we are in the middle of a tough situation, we know we're going to have each other's back to be able to move something forward. Our meeting schedule, we meet quarterly with the governor in what's called a cabinet meeting, and we break it up into two parts. So we have a morning session with directors only, and we are able to do report outs on, central service issues. That's where Andy's team is able to report out on where we are with initiatives, whether it's IT or HR issues. We'll usually have someone from the policy team talk about legislative updates. We'll have someone from the budget office talk about budget, high-level budget type of issues. And then in the afternoon, for about 2 hours, we gather with the governor, and we'll usually do report outs, again, linking back to the Arizona management system. But we've introduced over this past year a featured speaker, and that's been really cool. We usually get someone from the private sector or one of our universities, and they come in and just talk about leadership or things to inspire us about. And it's been really kind of a nice takeaway. It's not just about business, but it's about, a time when the governor and that whole leadership group can kind of think through and think in a different way. And then monthly, the governor has a smaller group of agency directors called the Governor's Council. And that tends to be, it's about 15 directors, and it's the most kind of critical things that touch all Arizonans. So your health agencies, corrections, public safety, those types of things. And then bi-monthly, we have the goal council meetings that I had described earlier, and that doesn't include the governor. It's just the directors and staff.
Very helpful. Thank you guys both for walking us through those two examples. I know we had lots of registrants ask about how you build bridges, and those are both really good indicators of how you all have been so successful. What other questions do we have? We have time. We have about 10 more minutes. So what other questions do our attendees have? You can unmute your line, or if you're feeling a little shy, you're also welcome to send it in via chat.
Well, not to dominate from North Dakota, but this is the other Jody Hansen, Chief Administrative Officer, and I'm wondering how you all do the Chief of Staff role in addition to these roles, and what the relationship is and how the role is defined.
Are you referring to the Governor's Chief of Staff?
Yep.
Okay. So I work very, very closely with the Governor's Chief of Staff, and the Governor's Chief of Staff has 2 deputy chiefs, and one tends to be more focused on operations. The other one is more focused on policy. So the Chief of Staff, the Deputy Chief of Staff, and myself, we meet once a week, just the three of us, talking about whatever operation issue that's ongoing or we need to discuss. As I said, I also serve on the governor's executive team, so I'm in, those meetings are usually 4 times a week, which is the larger, about 10 exec team members. But, and again, it depends on the personality of the chief. I was hired by a different chief, and she left after 3 months on the job for me, which was a bit hard. And then the new chief came in, and he had not worked in state government, and so had a ton of questions about why this and why that, and why do we do it this way, and why aren't we doing that? And I would say that first year was pretty intense for both of us. I think if you talk to us now, I mean, we laugh about it now with each other, that we survived each other the first year, and I think we have an excellent working relationship now. But it also depends on the personality of your chief, and we happen to have someone who's very, I mean, he's brilliant, but he's very much likes to get in the weeds, let's put it that way. And so learning how to manage that, I think, is a key component for the chief operating officer. I'd be curious to hear how Gilbert interacts with his chief of staff.
Thank you. Yeah, same thing. I can't, I think Katy and I both you can't stress enough the importance of that relationship with the chief of staff. Obviously, they have a very important role for managing the overall, governor's office and agenda. I meet regularly once every week, one-on-one with the chief, and talk about, update him, make sure he's aware of different things. We, communicate offline quite often throughout the week. And then obviously every morning we've got our senior team meeting and can engage on that front. We too, here in Arizona, we went through a change. We had a chief of staff that had been here as part of the first term, and then our second chief has come in as part of the second term. And so the current chief had been a deputy chief, and so he, had been a part of the team, knew, all of the issues, and I had a good working relationship with him. So it was a pretty smooth transition. But certainly my role is to help him, and I talk often about if, wherever I can help plug in, and if there's issues that he has concerns about, wherever I and our whole team and the agency directors can help align things quickly, is trying to make sure he's not worrying at night about the operational side of things. I'm sure he does worry at night about operations because it's just, part of the job. But definitely want to, make sure that we are being responsive on that side of it, and then where they can spend more time on that strategic policy level, interacting with, legislators and community leaders across the state.
Great question, and thank you again for those insights. We have about 5 minutes left, probably time for one more good question. Would anybody like to close us out with one final question?
I have one. This is Jody Euchre again. How would you measure your performance as the chief operating officer?
Well, it sounds like Gilbert is much better at doing that than I am. So Oregon was one of the first states, and gosh, it's been 20 years ago maybe, we instituted what are called key performance measures. So I would not compare it with some of the more sophisticated performance management systems that are happening now. And then we took a turn implementing lean processes and all over the board. I tend to be a little more a censor about things. And I figure if the chief of staff and the governor are not calling me and saying, Katy, what in the world is going on, that's like my key performance measure. That, and we also do DAS, the chief operating office within DAS does a customer service survey And when we meet with all agency directors, we also ask them how the chief operating officer is doing. And oftentimes what we hear is just, we need more, it's communication. You just can't communicate enough, and can we get more information about this, that, or the other? I meet, just like Gilbert, on a very regular basis, one-on-one with agency directors and ask them the same thing: what can we be doing better to serve you? So I would say, at least here in Oregon, it's not a formalized process. It's really kind of going with my gut about how things are going, and the fact that the governor hasn't fired me, at least yet.
Well, I echo Katie's comment there. There are obviously the metrics, and numbers can certainly tell a story of where we're going with things. But a large part of this job, it's relationships, it's building connections, it's a feeling that people have of, are we going in the right direction and doing the right things. And so I think it's just that constant being open to feedback. How are we doing? How could we be better? Certainly when you get into moments where there's tough issues, you want to make sure that we deliver and try to solve whatever the particular issue is. But I would say there is that piece of where you can track and measure things, and you can have reports and goals and timelines to get things completed. But a large part of it, like anything, is it's just that constant, feedback loop, connecting, listening to how, the tone change, if there's things that are concerning to people, how do we make sure we try to listen and address that? But I echo exactly what Katy said as well. It's a constant thing that we've got to continue to build and grow and develop.
Very helpful. Thank you both for those comments. And also thank you to our participants for providing some great questions and some thought-provoking questions for us to chew on today. We are very close to time, so I'm going to wrap things up by thanking especially our two presenting teams from Oregon and Arizona. Thank you very much for your preparation and willingness to share your state ideas so that we can steal them amongst states. And I really appreciate your contributions and thought leadership on this very important topic. I also would like to thank our co-host for this event, the National Governors Association. We really appreciate the opportunity to host this together. Our chief administrators have been asking for a similar webinar for quite a while, and we're really happy to have the partnership to be able to provide it for our state members. So thank you all. Just a quick reminder, we did record today's call, so we will have that downloaded and available in NASCA's resource library here probably tomorrow afternoon. So we encourage you guys to share that amongst your colleagues if they were not able to attend today. And then immediately after the call, you'll get a very brief survey from us. We take our post-event surveys very seriously and use your ideas and feedback to form future content and curriculum. So please take just a moment to fill that out for us. We'd be very appreciative. NGA's publication they highlighted earlier will also be linked in that post-event email. So please be on the lookout for that. And with that, once again, thank you all very much for participating, and I hope everyone has a good afternoon. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.